word standard is generally used to describe an ideal to which other things are measured. But in the horticultural world, a standard trained plant means something a bit different. It's a pruning technique. It's when you take a naturally shrubby, mounding plant, kind of like this one right here, and you train it to have a single stem that comes up tall, and then it is pruned to have a ball of foliage up at the top, kind of like we got right here. This is a copper leaf. This is one called Inferno with small leaves, one of my favorite. But you can see that this is not the natural growth form or habit of the plant. It's been manipulated. We took a single stem, trained it up, and we created sort of a ball on a stick or a small tree. Now, this is used a lot of times for tropical flowering shrubs like lantana. In fact, lantana is probably the most plant often trained as a standard. You can see the plant starts out like this, and again, it's manipulated, grown into a nice little tree. But these make great patio container specimens. You see we've got it in a pot here. We bring it inside and out each summer, and it has a nice ball of flowers at the top. It looks fantastic. And these can live for several years. In fact, there's one at Oklahoma Gardening that I started when I was garden manager almost 20 years ago, and it is still used at the studio gardens. But the Inferno copperleaf here, you can see this is a 1-year-old plant. This one's a little bit older. This one's about 2 years old, and you can see that the stem gets thicker over time, and eventually it'll get strong enough we can take this stake away and it will support its own weight. So it really will look like a small tree. There are a lot of plants that can be used to train into a standard. This is a variegated myrtle, and it's got small leaves, and this one's grown a little bit taller than you normally would with a small, fine textured plant. These actually look nice if they're a smaller height, so you don't have to spend that much time to grow one this tall. Sometimes things like rosemary and lavender are trained in that way at a smaller height or a smaller standard. This is a curry plant, another little fragrant herb, and you can see it looks nice even though the stem is not quite as tall. But again, the plant starts out like this, and we train it into a ball on a stick. It's not all that hard to train a plant to a standard. You select an appropriate plant, something that has a strong enough stem to support a ball of foliage up at the top. Again, lantana used a lot, the variegated myrtle, those are used a lot, and you wouldn't believe it, but coleus over time will develop a really thick stem and become almost woody. Now, finding a plant at a nursery or garden center may be a little bit of a trick, because naturally the nursery growers or the people managing the garden centers will be pruning or pinching these back so they do look nice and bushy. This is a coleus called Peter's Wonder, and it got missed. It didn't get the top pinched out to cause that bushiness, so it would be an excellent candidate for a standard. You can see that main stem there well on its way to becoming a standard trained coleus. Now this one's called Orange King, one of my favorite coleus. You can see where it was pinched a while back right here, but we could come in and cut one of these away and retain this one as our standard leader. I'm going to start with this lantana right here. It's got this nice straight stem, got the bud up at the top. Going to come in, this looks cool, I know, but I'm going to cut that away. Put this to the side, and then we'll take a stake. We're going to get it as close to the main stem as possible and get it straight up and down. I'm going to put it in, kind of twist it a little bit. Try not to damage any roots, but hopefully the plant is healthy enough those will grow back pretty quick. And then we need to tie it. And when you're tying your standard to the stake, there are a number of things you could use. You could use something like nylon hose that will stretch and not cause any girdling or restricting of the stem that can cause some damage. If you use a twisty tie that's plastic with a wire inside, you could do kind of the old-fashioned or the normal twist of the twisty tie like this, but this will girdle the plant as this stem gets larger. So this will have to be checked very often and loosened to accommodate the growing stem. Now, one other method of applying a twisty tie is to do kind of the curly Q method, where you just kind of wrap it kind of snake fashion around the stem, and that way it's not as constricting, and as the stem gets larger it kind of pushes it apart. Rope needs to be checked periodically. This is a plastic rope, and one year I made the mistake of leaving this on some lantana too long, and I thought maybe it would give a little bit, but it didn't, and it really girdled the stem, and the stem ended up snapping. So if you use something really constricting, make sure you check it quite often. This type of material is just a strip of a cloth from an old t-shirt. That works great as well. Now, as your plant is growing, you want to keep this top bud, this apical bud, straight up, and you want it to get to the height where you want it, your ball of foliage and flowers to be located. And if it isn't kept in that upright position, you can have some issues. That bud up at the top of the stem actually releases a hormone that will keep the other buds from growing. You can see what happened here with this myrtle. It kind of broke free from the top of the stake, and I didn't catch it, and it kind of laid sideways for a while, and you can see all this other growth kind of branching out here. So we kind of lost that apical dominance. Now we can fix this. We'll just tie it up here and eventually pinch it and cause that ball of foliage to form up at the top. I've got an example right here with a lantana that we're working on to create a standard, and it got tall enough, and you can see the little stem here that has been pruned. That's where we topped it, or we cut it off, and then you can noticeably see what happened to all these side branches. You can see they just kind of shot off in all directions. Well, that's what we want at this point once it is tall enough. So now we'll just come in with our pruners and we'll make lots of cuts to start to form that ball of foliage. If something happens along the way and your top bud gets broken away, you can do some repair or fix that. This is a pentas, and you can see right here our terminal bud got cut away, and look what happened. Two shoots began to take off, so we no longer have a main central leader. But we can fix that. I'm going to take my pruners here, going to make a cut. But you can see we got a big bump right there. So what I'm going to do is take a razor blade, come in here, and we're just going to kind of slice that away. Just kind of grind down that bump. Really sharp razor works great. And what will happen after a while is the plant will start to seal over, kind of fix that wound, and then eventually you won't even notice that there was another stem there. We'll just tie that to a stake, sort of like a splint, and that bump will sort of go away after a while. Now, as far as maintenance goes on your standard, when they get really big, you will need to shear the ball of foliage up at the top. So that's not really hard to do. Just come in and kind of just take this down a little bit, always leaving some leaves. You don't want to cut off all the leaves. And then, of course, the stem itself will get little shoots or suckers coming up along the stem. So we'll need to keep those removed as well.